Can I have your attention, please? Thank you. First of all, a very, very warm welcome, and sorry for the delay, but I think you have enjoyed the time already, so it was well used. A very warm welcome to the last part of what we call the beneficiaries meeting, which is actually, I think, a meeting with, but above all, a celebration of human rights work and human rights defenders, supported through this European mechanism, Protect Defenders. And my name is Gerald Saarbrücker. I should introduce myself, sorry. My name is Gerald Saarbrücker. I'm the Secretary General of the World Organization Against Torture, which is a network of some 200 human rights defenders organizations. But I'm here mainly because I'm part of the board of Protect Defenders, so we have a last session, but it's really a session that brings to conclusion 3 days or 4 days of work and being together. And I can only say I already seen in the room over there how much joy there is being together, because we haven't been together for such a long time. And we are all accustomed to the Zoom meetings and everything, and in some ways brought us also closer together. But it also made these type of meetings impossible. So it's just a moment of joy in a way to have you all here for a last discussion, but a last discussion that I think will be forward-looking in what more we can do to protect human rights defenders, and also not only how we protect them in the short term, but how we can support their causes and their struggles to be more, in the end, more resilient, more safe, and more effective. Before I call my speakers to the podium, I think this is a meeting to celebrate human rights defenders, and usually we applaud at the end the speakers, etc. I propose we actually start with an applause to all the defenders that we brought here and that have done just amazing work. Now, we have a bit of an experiment. We have lots of people that have a lot to say. So we have to be quite disciplined, but it might be a bit, you see the many chairs. But we want to start with one of you defenders to give a bit of an introduction also into the discussion that we had for the last 3 days, before we then go into a panel type of discussion. And I would ask Cristina Palabay from the Philippines. She is Secretary General of Karapatan, to come forward and give us a brief update on what were the key points that came out of the discussions over the last days, and what should we care for in the future. I don't know, Tina, are you here? Yes, there you are. I was already getting nervous.
Thank you.
Take this, or?
I'll take this.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, our bus broke down this afternoon. That's why we were late. And Jared, you should be more careful. But good day to everyone. We human rights defenders from more than 30 countries are immensely honored to be with you today, 4 years after the last annual meeting of ProtectDefenders.eu, amid the extremely difficult contexts in our communities, countries, and regions. In the past years, we saw the poorest of the poor and disadvantaged peoples bearing the heaviest impact of a pandemic, of wars of aggression, inflicting massive loss of lives of civilians, the steady rise of authoritarianism, and extreme repression of rights and freedoms. And of course, the unprecedented economic crisis that has shook at the core of our rights and dignity as human beings. In our work as human rights defenders in the past years, we have come together, defying constraints of borders and state-imposed restrictions to strengthen, to support, complement, and help each other overcome our grief, our loss, our pains, to provide life-saving, essential service for communities and peoples. We celebrate and take our wins whenever and wherever we get it, such as the release of some detained human rights defenders in Guatemala, Burundi, the Philippines, and Saudi Arabia, the UN resolutions on access to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, on environmental defenders, on protection of human rights defenders in conflict and post-conflict situations, and during the pandemic. Our movements, our communities, our solidarity remain as pillars of our strength. However, the great risks on our lives, liberty, and security have gone on overdrive. Defenders have been increasingly stigmatized. We were called with various names, labels that depict us as criminals or less than humans, or to inflict harmful gendered impacts that increase our vulnerabilities in a world where patriarchy and discrimination still largely exist. Social media platforms and offline attacks have likewise increased. Lawfare, or the weaponization of laws against human rights defenders, whether through trumped-up criminal charges, counter-terror or anti-money laundering or administrative policies and laws, or the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, have been vastly used to curtail and transgress on our freedom of expression, press freedom, freedom of assembly and association, of mobility, of privacy, access to funding and resources, and many other rights and liberties. In an environment that is likewise unprecedented, we see our journalists, our lawyers, our judges and magistrates, our truth tellers from extremely distressed Palestine, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Colombia, South Africa, Myanmar, and many other countries, experiencing the greatest challenges in a supposedly democratic and free world. But they have been increasingly gagged and attacked. Extrajudicial killings of human rights defenders and arbitrary or illegal arrests and detentions of our colleagues are on an uptick, especially among land, environmental, and indigenous defenders, with nary a sliver of justice for the victims. Civic and democratic spaces are repressed or are closing, if not already closed, in many countries. That is why we lament that as we commemorate, we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the UN Declaration of Human Rights Defenders this year, and the 14th year after the European Union guidelines on human rights defenders, we are in a more difficult world. Only 15 countries out of the 193 UN member states, or 8%, have enacted national policies for the protection of human rights defenders. Legislations that protect us from direct and indirect actions of businesses that impact on the environment and on the quality of lives of those in communities have yet to be realized. As NGOs supported by ProtectDefenders.eu, we take this occasion to say that the consortium needs further, stronger, and broader support as it takes on, adapt, or respond to the needs of the risks and the risk faced by defenders and strengthen the current programs it has to help us. We call on the EU and the member states to ensure effective, timely, relevant, and comprehensive implementation of the EU guidelines on human rights defenders, including regular briefings of country missions with defenders, increased support for defenders through political support for their causes, and through funding and technical resources, and visa and relocation mechanisms with strong gender-sensitive approach. We join the EU to help us push for the enactment of human rights defenders' protection legislation and mechanisms, and clear definite indicators on justice for human rights defenders. We likewise, again, call on the EU to promote the guidelines among states, including the US, Canada, Australia, ASEAN, SAARC, among others. Guidelines on enabling environment for civil society and strong language on the protection of human rights defenders in the mandatory human rights and environmental due diligence likewise needs to be developed. We propose to the EU to engage with social media and internet-based companies to uphold and protect the rights of human rights defenders against attacks and disinformation. Similarly, we call on the EU to ensure corporate accountability for their involvement in attacks on human rights defenders around the world, including through supporting the UN process for the development of a binding instrument for corporate accountability. So to close, we thank ProtectDefenders.eu for bringing us together today. Let us all hope and work relentlessly in addressing the seeming backsliding of our democracies and in promoting the vision that everyone should enjoy our rights to promote, protect, and defend human rights. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. I think you've set the scene on the discussion that took place, the challenges that we face, the needs we have, or the needs you have, but also reminding that we have successes and that some of our defender colleagues have been released as a result and through this work, so we should also see the successes we have. I have now two panels, and I'd like to call them panels of hope. Or panels of support. And my first panel is an international panel, and I'd like to ask Mary Lawlor, Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, Ambassadrice Delphine Borione, l'ambassadrice pour les droits humains en France, Joel Hernández García, the Rapporteur of the Inter-American System, who is with us here today, and Chiara Adamo from IMPA, I still say DEFCO often, the European Commission, who is really the anchor to this work with Protect Defenders. If you could come to the stage. And in fact, well, yeah, you can please sit down. And in fact, we asked two basic questions to all of the panelists. One is what gives you hope and what makes you proud in a way of the work on defenders, and secondly, what more do we have to do to address the challenges, including those challenges Christina has addressed. I start with, I think, the home mandate on human rights defenders, which is Mary's mandate as Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, and I think we can all agree it does good to know that there's one of us in this mandate, and so, Mary, you want to start? Do you need a microphone? Oh, you have one. Where? Then take mine. Okay.
Sorry, I'm the dinosaur when it comes to technology, as you all know, anyone who's interacted with me. So, about hope, to start with. What?
Give me a hope.
So, I think, you know, when I come to a meeting like this, and yesterday I spoke to so many of you, it's what gives me hope. All you have to do is look around the room and you see so many different nationalities full of patient, committed, resilient people working to defend human rights. So I don't think we should ever forget that. And my next report to the Human Rights Council is going to be on the small victories that human rights defenders have achieved, and also the systemic change in some cases. I've been collecting over the last 2 years stories of these, and we're putting them together, but we will also be asking you all to input into the questionnaire, which is on the website of OHCH, or the Rapporteur's website, but also on Twitter. So I want to start with a quote by somebody that I really admired. He was an Irish poet called Seamus Heaney. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he said, "Hope is not optimism, which expects things to turn out well, but something rooted in the conviction that there is good worth fighting for." And I think you all understand that. When we talk about, when we talk about the situation for human rights defenders now and the terrible challenges that are in the world at the moment, we realize that human rights defenders, we've been here before and we will be here again, but human rights defenders know the way to achieve social change bit by bit. It's like pushing a boulder up the hill, and everybody does something that, as Seamus Heaney also said, we were put here to improve civilization. I was looking up these statistics from a evidence-based research business organization about the number of NGOs in the world today. There are 10 million NGOs in the world today. Now that gives you hope, doesn't it? When I started in the 70s in Ireland, there were only a few. Now we have thousands in Ireland. Now I know these 10 million include Gongos, but they can't be more than 1 million. And in India, for example, there are 3.3 million. In Kenya, what I love about this is that 80% of the human rights defenders in Kenya are under 24. So next year, as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, I'm trying to include as many human rights defenders who will take forward the next 25 years, who haven't decided on the cutoff age, whether it'll be 25 or 30, but they'll be the ones who'll be doing this stuff when I'm long gone. So the other statistic I thought was really interesting was that if NGOs were a country, they would be the 5th largest country in the world. And when I look back at it is important to take a kind of a global sort of looking back as we go forward. Like in the 70s when I started, Cambodia, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iraq, Uganda, they were countries where mass murderers ruled. In Latin America, as Joel will tell you, they're Chile, Brazil, Guatemala, Uruguay, Argentina. There were military dictatorships in all those regions, and in Argentina, people were handcuffed together and thrown out of planes to drown. Yes, of course, things aren't great in Latin America, but at least now there are elections. Human rights violations are rampant everywhere. And at that time, in the 70s, human rights defenders weren't even known. There was no understanding of who a human rights defender was. And I do think that, but they still kept chipping away against oppression, autocracy, corruption, and conflict. And it was really in Vienna in '93 that the whole notion of human rights defenders became, for the first time, recognized. And then we had the Declaration in 1998. And now we have all sorts of instruments that help ensure that the knowledge about human rights defenders, what they do, and their legitimate right to do that work is understood. When I look at the mandate, and I'm very happy to see Michelle here, who of course has a new mandate, since we started in 2020, we have led on 252 communications. I see communications being very important to oppressive states. We've joined hundreds more, but the ones we actually initiated were 252. And we have had successes. Some of them are very small successes, like in China, for example, where, you know, a human rights defender is given access to books and television and is moved to a room with daylight. Or another case in China where they were allowed to see their lawyer for the first time after many years. And another one where their family was, they were allowed family visits. And then we've also seen releases. We've seen posthumous, acquittal. And we've seen in El Salvador, I mentioned earlier on, a tweet. I need to talk about social media a bit. It's so important. Governments hate publicity. They really hate publicity. They try and stop you doing press releases. They try and alter your press releases. They get back to you when they see something on Twitter. And I will give you a very funny example. I did a tweet, I did a case on Cuba, I tweeted it. One of the diplomats came back and said that I'd broken the code of conduct. I asked for a meeting. I texted him and I said, you know perfectly well I haven't broken the code of conduct. He texted me back and he said, we must meet. And then when I met him, he said, you know I have to do this. Otherwise they'll think I'm doing no work in Havana. And then another tweet that went viral with 400 retweets was in India on women human rights defenders, and they were released. Maybe that's a different India one. But anyway, there are quite a lot of, we see quite a lot of positive positivity coming from communications and social media, which we also tie to communication. And I must emphasize that none of this is just up to me. It is a collective effort. We are all in this together. We all have our role to play. It's about what you can do from your vantage point, whether you're a member of an NGO, documenting, monitoring, bringing to the attention of the international community, whatever it is. That's what it takes. And all we need to do is we need to continue persisting, resisting. We need to be resilient, consistent, and committed. Is that enough?
I think we can give applause. And if I listen to you, I think we speak a lot about, and we spoke about this with Joel as well, about due diligence, that we have to mainstream this into processes. Well, if we are the 5th biggest country of the world, maybe we should ask for a seat in the Security Council. But anyhow, I'd like to turn to Joel now, who is a member of the Inter-American Commission, and he is also the mandate holder, the special rapporteur in the Inter-American Commission on 2 mandates actually, human rights offenders and migration, which often as a topic marries in Mary's next report, for example. And for those who don't come from Latin America, maybe a confession from my side, and as an anti-torture organizations, confessions are never good. But when I started human rights work, I was very Eurocentric in a way, and I felt the European system is by far the most superior. And one of the learnings I had is actually in progressiveness, it's the Inter-American system, in the conceptual thinking on reparations, but also very important for the protection of human rights defenders when we think about precautionary measures and other tools. So I think we are really pleased to have you with us and give us the hope and give us the way forward.
Yes, thank you, Gerard, and of course, there's hope, and I fully coincide with Mary, who has spoken very eloquently on hope. Why is there hope? First of all, because little by little, gradually, now it's very well recognized the human right to defend human rights. And that has not been easy, and this is thanks to you. That has been possible thanks to your daily work, your dedication, and sometimes to the suffering that you have endured. It was, Mary has just mentioned the Vienna Conference 93, when everything started, later the 98 UN Declaration, and little by little, the human right to defend human rights have been recognized, but also it has been recognized that states have an obligation to respect and guarantee the right to defend human rights. And from there, there's a whole history of 25 years at a regional and at the universal system, creating the international human rights law, which provide the minimum international standards to protect the right to defend human rights, but also through state practice and through the jurisprudence of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, the obligations of the states have been developed. Now it is perfectly clear that states are obliged to respect the work that you do. And that means, and the first and most important obligation for state is precisely to support your work, not to stigmatize the work that you do, because human rights defenders play a very important role in every single democracy. There cannot be a democracy without human rights defenders, because thanks to you, you are able to give the social scrutiny to the public power. And now this is more important than ever. But also, states have the obligation to prevent any damage to your work, and also they have the obligation to protect the work that you do. And when there are violations to human rights, states have the obligation to investigate and sanction and repair those violations. And as I said at the beginning, this is one of the things that we must be optimistic and hopeful, because this right to defend human rights is very well rooted nowadays. Second thing of hope and pride, I would say, for the Americas is the development of the Inter-American system of human rights for more than 62 years. Yes, we were inspired in the European model. Yes, we were inspired in the UN mechanisms. But again, the Americas also make its contribution to the development of the international law of human rights. Now, as you know, as my fellow friends from Latin America know, the Inter-American system is a two-body system. I belong to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, but thanks to the work of the Inter-American Court, both bodies, hand to hand, have worked through the years in order to do three important things. One, to repair violations of human rights. Second, to promote public policies in concerned states by means of the measures of non-repetitions that are addressed to states. But third, and very important, to develop the inter-American jurisprudence on the right to defend human rights. And I think this is something that we also have to be hopeful, because when all the doors are closed at the national level, when the civic space is closed nationally, there's always hope to go to the inter-American system. And one of the features that Joel was just mentioned, and I think is very important to stress, is the practice of the Inter-American Commission to issue precautionary measures. This is very unique, and I'm always surprised of the development of this practice, because the power of the Commission to issue precautionary measures is not established in the American Convention on Human Rights. It has been developed through the practice, and it's a long practice because it started in the 80s. And now, even if the American Convention does not give the Commission this power, but the rules of procedure of the Commission does regulate the granting of precautionary measures. Now, I think we all can agree that precautionary measures is positive international law, because that it is practice, a common practice of the Commission, which is respected by states, understood as opinio juris. So this, again, is the result of a long-standing practice of the Commission through the years. Just to give you an idea of the importance of precautionary measures for human rights defenders. Nowadays, the Commission has around 60-20 precautionary measures in place, and out of which 40%, around 240, are protecting human rights defenders. So 40% is the most important component of the work of the precautionary measures. And it is such because the precautionary measures in its protective nature is precisely intended to protect people who are in risk of irreparable damage in order for the state to adopt the necessary measures to protect life and personal integrity. Because let's not forget that in order for you to exercise your right to defend human rights, it is very important that the state respects your life, your right to life, to personal integrity, to freedom of speech, to freedom of association, to access of information. This is a group of human rights which are associated to your work and which is our obligation as an international organization to protect your rights in that direction. The Commission also understands the importance of strategic communication with states. And this is something for me that is of particular interest, because many times NGOs approach to us and they ask for a tweet, or they ask for a press release. And when they do it, everybody is happy, everybody feels that it's heard. But many times we have to look more closely under the basis of a victim-centered strategy. What is best for a victim? What is best for a human rights defender who is in prison? To make a public pronunciation and to create a negative reaction of the state, or probably to entertain a private and more direct communication with key actors. What is important at the end is the life and the personal integrity of human rights defenders. The way that we achieve that can be different from one situation to another. There is not a recipe. What for me it's very important for the Commission is to understand its nature as an international organization. And as such, it's also quasi-judicial, but also quasi-political. So we have to combine out of our toolbox, which are the political instruments that we have to implement, including public diplomacy, including soft diplomacy, and the times that we have to take care of issues through our system of cases and petitions. So we are at your disposal, and very happy to be here and share with you the work of the Inter-American Commission.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Joel. I think one element I just want to pick up, because I think you all remember that we all speak of closing civil society space, right? Some years this was not a vocabulary we used. You mentioned, I think, something very important, the right to defend rights. We speak about the duty to protect because there's a right to defend rights. And maybe we have to reframe, in a way, the discussion back to the right to defend as a natural right we have, and the protective duty is coming from there. So I really like that, and I could not resist making a comment here. Maintenant, je vais tourner vers l'ambassadrice pour les droits humains de la France.
Now, I'd like to ask to the representative of France to take the floor. We are very happy that she's with us.
Parce que je crois...
We are very happy indeed, because we've really seen in the last years that there are more and more countries like France that have an ambassador for human rights. And in my work, I've seen that it can be an extremely useful tool. So for the defenders, for mobilizing, And so it's also something that's an anchor, that's a tool for the defenders of human rights. And the two questions that we've already raised that I'd like to ask you, but I would also like to ask, who is Marianne? Well, who is Marianne? Well, first of all, thank you very much for your invitation. It's a great honor for me to be with you today. And indeed, the first reason why we can feel hope is that you are there. The fact that you are here in Brussels today discussing all together with the support of the European Union, and the fact that I hope at least you can go back home feeling stronger, considering that you have even more tools to carry on your fight. And that's a reason to feel hopeful. The second point, as it's already been mentioned by our two colleagues, is that when we examine the situation of the past, we can see sometimes observe some regressions. But at the same time, I wouldn't have liked to be born in 1830, 1930. And I really think that we are today in a world where the rights are more and more respected. And it is so because we've been able to build, because of those awful wars, because of the atrocities we've experienced, we've been able to build an international architecture that is not perfect, but it exists and it offers us many tools. And I would like to thank you for your role, for Michelle, what Michelle does as well, for all the UN does, and for all the countries do in order to enforce the rights and to have them respected. And in case of violations, the countries do not like to be reprimanded. So it shows that they are paying attention to our actions. And then another reason why we can feel satisfied and hopeful is to see all the things we can do. And I would like to congratulate Chiara Adamo and all the things done by the European Union, the emergency fund, the Defenders EU, everything that's done by our countries, because the EU was created on the basis of a union of rights and freedoms, a union in order to build up solidarity and human dignity. So it is indeed the objective of our union that you be able to carry out these projects. Now, very quickly, because I know we don't have much time, to tell you about what France does. First of all, Marianne is a symbol of the French Republic. And it was created during the revolution in 1789. We have the Declaration on Human Rights and the rights of citizens. There were other moves before that, but it was one of the first declarations on human rights and on the rights of citizens. And Marianne was a woman who has a special hat that was close to the one that the Greeks were giving to the slaves they wanted to free. So there is this concept of freedom, of liberation, and the slogan of France is freedom, equality, and fraternity. And the president of the Republic, when I just started working as an ambassador a year and a half ago, the president wanted us to create a program in order to strengthen the support to human rights defenders, for people who fight for freedoms. But basing himself on the definition of human rights defenders. And it's been mentioned, there is also the declaration that has been adopted by the UN in 1998. And with the stakeholders, with Michel Fort, with the FADH, with Chiara Adamo, with different organizations and stakeholders who were responsible for refugees in France, we have created a mechanism in order to strengthen our support to human rights defenders. First, with an international point of view, it was already the case because our embassies have to be houses for human rights. And I'd like to invite you to go to our embassies because they have that duty to protect human rights and to support human rights defenders. But with strengthening programs for these human rights organizations and of human rights defenders, we have established a platform on human rights that is a project with the Development Agency of France. And we've also worked with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs to give more means to the NGOs and to institutions defending human rights, because they are also a very important tool. And the second point is how we work in France. We didn't start from scratch because there are many measures. We have the REPI programs with lawyers. We have the post program for scientists in exile. We had also the House of Journalists and networks such as the Econ network and so on. But we wanted to have something more. And so we created a mechanism in order to receive for 6 months in France human rights defenders coming from different countries in the world. For the moment, we have 15, in order to help them strengthening their, well, for capacity building, for strengthening their contacts and so on and so forth. We have had the first group of very committed women, sometimes working at international level. For instance, that young lady from Sudan who's the advisor of a minister working on climate, or someone from Colombia who's fighting in her country, or someone from Tanzania who's also working at grassroots level to fight against mutilations. So we're going to go on with that program. And the third point was the idea to strengthen synergies between all the players, i.e. all those people who in France wanted to promote and defend human rights and support the defenders, but also at European level. As you have mentioned it, for instance, we have ambassadors for human rights, like me. We are 10 ambassadors in the European Union. Some of them have very nice programs, such as in Germany. And there are also shelters in Irish or many other programs. So the idea is to create synergies in order to improve our efficiency and to support, to be at your service as human rights defenders, because there are no human rights without human rights defenders. So thank you so much, and we are there to help you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, et je crois.
Thank you very much. And I think that political support through embassies and your work is something very important for our friends, our colleagues on the field. So I hope that they will be able to easily access the French embassies to claim that help.
Who is really standing as an anchor in a way for Protect Defenders and for much of the support that actually human rights defenders, and I'm sure some of you here in the room as well, receive. And we can see her as a donor, but I think we, at least at Protect Defenders, always see you as a partner in crime. And in a way you could say, Chiara is not everything, but without her there would be nothing when it comes to Protect Defenders. So I just wanted to make the expectation a bit higher for your remarks. Please, Chiara.
Okay, so the question is what gives me hope and the way forward. So of course, after this introduction, the reply is, you give me hope, girl. And you give me hope, Patricia. And seriously, you give me hope in this room, all the human rights defenders who were kind enough to take the time and travel all the way to here for this gathering, for this annual gathering, for this celebration. And you give me hope. I mean, I don't know how you do, but you have such an energy. It's incredible. It's a somber geopolitical context. It's a somber context for human rights, despite all the progress that we could have done in decades. It's very somber, and so we need good news, and we need some celebration. So I really take your invitation to really start by celebrating your bravery, your courage. So what gives me hope is that we were able to support through ProtectDefenders.eu more than 55,000 individual human rights defenders. And that is not nothing, and it's really what let us go, and I see Christine, the colleagues, I mean, it's an institutional support. It's not it doesn't depend on persons. It really is human rights support, key priority for the European Union. Also in a moment where you mentioned it, others have diminished the support, have other priorities. We increased this Protect Defenders mechanism. We just signed a commitment for 30 million euros by my commissioner, 30, yeah, by my commissioner Pilainen with the Protect Defenders EU is the third wave. And I'm proud of that because it is true that this is ever more needed. And we need to really set the bar high. We need really to encourage all of the international community to follow suit. There are no excuses, and I think this is a red line. I'm proud of those of my colleagues in European Union delegations, our diplomats, and I know you have stories to tell, but if you think of it, they are in most difficult environments and they really do their best. They do their best in assisting in trials, in issuing political statements, in discreet diplomacy, in financial support, in signaling to us individual cases of defenders that we can then channel and support at the headquarter level. I know we are not perfect, no institution is, but we have the drive and the determination and the political will to do our best, and this is for the long run. So I think there is some hope. Of course, we also promote human rights and democracy in different facets. We put forward 2 programs, one really dedicated to human rights and democracy, one on civil society, enabling environment. And this really allows us also to support the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights, a special procedure to support the ICC, whose work nowadays also more important than ever, and regional organizations around the world. So the way forward, 3 points, because I know that you know it's getting late. The first is this mechanism is successful because it's evolving with the needs of the human rights defenders. We are there to listen and to discuss and to dialogue as partners, and really make this instrument evolving with the evolving of the threat. COVID brought new threats to the human rights landscape, to human rights defender. The digital threat was not new, but it is now at a different level. The need for more strategic litigation advocacy, you know, combining short-term with long-term. The need for more also psychosocial support. You know, mental health affected us all, affected human rights defenders very much. So all of this we hear. We are there to listen and to adapt. So the new mechanism will be able, I hope, to respond better to this increase in need. So flexibility is the first way forward, and listening to each other. The second is, you mentioned it all, we need an holistic approach. We were with the commissioner this afternoon, and some of you said it very well. Thank you very much for your financial support, but we need your political voice and coherent support. So, of course, it's a matter of bringing this all together. I very much also want to applaud the initiative by France. They have now their own protection of defenders mechanism, but it also allowed us to bring together all the member states, actors, the human rights ambassadors, the mechanisms that are really happening in other states, so that we can increase also synergies and coordination on the ground. Because in the end, you are there, you know, you are in, I don't know, you are in Colombia, you are in Tanzania and so forth. And it's so important that, you know, be it France, the Netherlands, the European Union, the US, we are all there on the ground and we coordinate, and that really allows for better support. So I think that's in the to-do list to really promote this more. And also I heard that you want us to promote the EU guidelines internationally, which I think is something which pride us, and we are really happy to continue and bring forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We are making a break in a sense with this panel, but please stay and have a second panel. I think there were a number of important things we have to listen and learn, because indeed, human rights defenders work, but also human rights defenders protection does evolve. We had not thought about psychosocial support the same way some years back as we do today, and there are many more examples like this. But the second word was energy, and I think the energy I want to bring even more on the panel. If I can ask our fellow human rights defenders, Yvette Mushiga de la RDC, Yasmin Shurbaji, I really apologize for my pronunciations, Rocio Valkyria Santos Rey, Uke Muratlivia from Kyrgyzstan, and Monica Maritje Kaile. I have to do some training classes maybe on names, but please give them an applause. They have. Sorry. Okay. In a similar way, we asked also here to think of what makes you proud of your work, what are the successes, what do you see, but also what more do you need in a way to do your work better and to be better protected. And I don't have a clear list how we start, so I just do as it is here. I would ask Yvette Mushigo de la RDC de prendre les paroles d'abord. Ah, c'est vous. Désolé.
I will ask her to speak first. Thank you very much. I am Yvette Mushigo, as you've been told. I come from RDC, from the Democratic Republic of Congo, from the Kivu region. And it's interesting that you ask me what gives me hope with the international movement of human rights. For me, hope is within solidarity on protection for defenders of human rights that has become universal. When I see the profile of the people who are in here, when I see all the mechanisms that have been set up to help as much as possible those who are in danger, for me, that's really hope. But at the same time, when I see the existence of all these programs, which act, and all the partners who act beside us, and who go all the way in supporting us, and supporting the women in our villages, that really gives me a lot of hope in what I do. Thirdly, whether you look at it from close or from far, what keeps pushing us is to see, one way or another, the pressure that is being led politically towards our states, forcing them to respect the democratic principles, and at the same time to respect all the principles linked to human rights. And then I think preventive programs are important,
dans lesquels nous
in a toxic environment like the one in which we intervene,
mais en même temps aussi on est utile aussi quand on est encore
because we are more useful when we are in our environment, but we are most useful when we're alive.
nous donner.
That's for sure. And that gives us hope too.
Mais dans tout ça, si je peux revenir sur les éléments
And if I can come back on the elements that allow me to continue my work for the future, the first thing I think is that we can see the recognition
comme actrices
of the role of women
d'opportunités et de potentialités.
and the potential and opportunities that they represent.
Voir rarement de programmes
Because we rarely see programs
de travail
that
et là
specifically take into consideration the work led by women.
très
And when I speak of women, I mean rural women. 80% of the population of my country is a rural population. And when I see the dynamic, the energy of all these rural women that really try to do something to support the other women
environnement qui est très
in an environment that is extremely patriarchal,
les empêche des fois de
where the norms and practices stop them from doing what they want to do, in an environment where access to social services is almost impossible,
un problème
in a place where moving around, mobility is really difficult because infrastructures are so bad.
pas reconnaître
I think it is really important to continue our work to recognize the efforts of all those women and all the potential that they have within them.
ça passe aussi par bien sûr
And this goes through
de ces lignes de conduite
the
à toutes ces femmes là
adaptation of all these lines of conduct of all these women. When we
que ça présente
read the guidelines,
généraux
we feel that they present general lines, and we don't really see at certain levels the inclusivity regarding the issues of women and other marginalized groups. It's important that we adapt them and that we update them to match those specific issues.
de ces femmes là qui continuent à se battre
And many of those women that keep fighting locally
dans une situation de précarité.
are in a very precarious situation,
On sait que
which brings us to think that if we really want them to provide all the efforts that they can, we need to provide an environment where the guarantee of basic services is there. Because personally, if I don't know how I'm going to send my kids to school,
le temps de penser que
I don't really know when I will have the time to think that another woman might need to send her own kids to school. So it's a vicious circle in a way. And to guarantee certain basic services would allow us to improve
le plus élémentaire possible.
the guarantee of elementary rights, fundamental rights.
Et j'ai dit dans la
But I also think that in the future,
important vraiment des
it is really important to fight for
militaires. Là, je vois
transitional mechanisms, in particular in my country's case,
le pays a connu
because with everything that my country has gone through in terms of conflicts,
les violences les plus inimaginables
we have seen unimaginable forms of violence.
à cohabiter avec
And when we continue to cohabit with the same people who were identified as the perpetrators,
même
it discourages, but at the same time, it makes us revolt. It makes us rebel. We had hope with a president. We thought, well, at least he is not in the same system that was in force for so long.
de mettre en place des mécanismes de
He may be able to put in place those mechanisms of transitional justice.
aussi là-dessus.
So we have to be able to push in that direction as well, because many families are waiting for reparation.
Il y a eu un cas
In each family, there's at least one case. Personally, I lost 3 members of my family.
situation et que
And when you are in such a situation, and we have to deal with authorities, with people in the authorities
par des postes encore
who are being thanked and promoted to even higher positions. It's really revolting and discouraging. And justice is one of the ways to try to resolve such toxic environment.
conditions dans lesquelles les
The conditions in which
RDC
human rights defenders work in
très
the Democratic Republic of Congo are very precarious because so far we have not had any legislation to protect
niveau
specifically human rights defenders. In my own province, in Kivu and North Kivu,
des défenseurs.
there is a provincial authority that protects human rights defenders and journalists, but we must see
Une loi générale.
this
Ça sera
at a higher level, on a national level, with the legislation to try to guarantee our work,
que
even though the reality is, sure, it's nice to have laws, but the implementation of the laws is another thing. But still, we want to have the laws. It would be a first step for us.
un autre petit point,
Another point
c'est
that came to my mind,
de
and I've already mentioned, is to tropicalize the
lignes là en tenant compte des
guidelines,
vismes
bearing in mind the emergence of the activism of women in rural areas. Their realities are completely different from women who live in big urban places. We have to be able to adapt our guidelines to the legitimacy of women who have become a reference in their communities and who do an incredible amount of work without a true knowledge of the tools that they dispose of that should be there to protect them. So for me, hope would also be
soutenir toutes ces
to really support all those initiatives of local protection.
toute la chance de quitter les pays pour aller ailleurs.
They don't all have the opportunity to go elsewhere, to leave their country or even their province or their village. So how can they
De ces droits-là.
lean on the support locally
C'est vraiment difficile.
to guarantee their security? It's very difficult to intervene with so many challenges that are infrastructural,
Socio-structurel,
social,
mais pas
social structural, if we don't
dans la politique.
put an accent in foreign politics
On est parfois certaines aides par
with a deal that can be conditioned with inclusivity aids and the human rights respect. This will help us in the improvement
et aussi la
of women's conditions and everybody else's condition. I thank a lot in
fin fond.
Protection Internationale that accompanies us and that has come in the deepest villages. I like to work with rural women because I have the impression that we have a group of women that are
leurs droits.
that have a very basic knowledge of their own rights, and to reinforce their capacities and skills really allows us to improve the level of execution of laws, but also to see them participate to the local governance. Thank you very much for your attention.
Je crois que la réaction disent tous.
Well, I think that the reaction clearly shows how appreciated it is. Thank you for those very concrete proposals. Thank you for reminding us that there are some women defenders. It's a very relevant cause, and it is not a coincidence that we have a panel of women defenders here today. And I would like to thank you for talking about the impunity topic, because if we do not take into account the political and the political context, and also the fact that there are some very serious violations.
Yasmin Shubaji from Syria, from an organization Families for Justice. And I have to say that in my work, as a torture work that we have as a network, some of the most
كجزء من العمل
were actually families of victims that started to mobilize and work on human rights. So thank you for your work, and please.
مرحبا أنا رح
Hello, I'm going to speak in Arabic.
أنا اسمي ياسمين.
My name is Yasmin Sharbaji. My name is Yasmin Sharbaji.
سوري.
I am a Syrian lady.
لإلي
For me,
السؤال اللي
I'm going to respond to the question posed, where am I going to get hope in our struggle? Frankly speaking, hope is that we are still alive.
حياة.
We are still alive, and
الثاني هو إن
so the second hope, the second source of hope is that I am not alone. I'm not alone. The third, many
والعرب
Syrian women and Arab women and foreign women
تناضل
around the world, they are struggling, thriving for human rights causes, not only women, but men and young people, even children. It's transnational. This is something transnational. There is so much hope I have that we have a just cause,
العدالة
freedom, justice, dignity for humanity.
عندي إيمان
I have faith
أشتغل فيه.
of the causes for which we are working. And I have met people who believe in our causes. I am a human rights activist since I was young.
أنا
But when I was young, they were not telling me you are a human rights activist. You are an opposition, a small opponent to the regime. My aunt, she said to me, you are the devil's lawyer, or the lawyer of the devil. And this is, of course, this is a stigma. So I grown up, I'm thinking in myself, maybe I am not good. I have to stop struggling, but it's in my veins. I cannot get rid of it being an activist. The Syrian revolution started in Syria. The Syrian regime displaced, killed, apprehended, arrested. I'm not going to say, as my aunt said to me, the regime said, the president said that we are terrorists. So, and then I started to wondering, am I an opponent, an opposer, or am I a lawyer of the devil? But I have wondered, and I have also asked the people who are like me. People are like me. They are saying that we are human rights defenders. This gives us hope.
أنا حابة شوي بس أعطي سياق بسيط.
I wanted to talk a little bit about people who do not know what is happening in my country, so that I would like to have more focused ideas. We have started a just, righteous revolution in Syria, demanding for rights, justice, but we were encountered with by bullets, by arms, by forced disappearance, just like other authoritarian regimes, autocratic regimes. My father and my brother, they were arrested. Until now, I don't know anything about them. I'm not alone. So according to the Syrian Network of Human Rights, that there are more than 134,000 people in the prisons of the Syrian regime, as well as the forced disappeared person. This is what has been documented. We don't know exactly the numbers. I have attended a court that there was a court in Europe that of an officer who was torturing Syrians. I wasn't happy. I wanted my father and my brother to be present in that court, to hear the verdict, to hear the judge saying the verdict. And there are still women trying to struggle for their loved ones. I am a member of a movement trying to release their loved ones, to be released by the Syrian regime. We have started it in 2011 because the moment the revolution started, there were immediately arrests and apprehensions and detentions. Sorry, I would like to take my breath.
شكرا.
Thank you.
Thank you. النساء
women and the number of women. So the movement in which I am working, the name of the title of the organization, it's Families for Freedom. So there is no political nature of this movement or organization. We would like to know the destiny of where all those loved ones, the people women who have lost their fathers, husbands. So we are now 265 women, active women. We are struggling, we are thriving to release our people, loved people in Syria. There isn't any one party in Syria. You have the regime, we have Iran, we have Russia, we have al-Nusra, we have Daesh. All those parties are present on the Syrian ground. So after 11 years, those members of our families are still in detention. I'm talking about a brother, a father, a son. So try to imagine the situation that we are going through. People like us who are living in neighboring countries of Syria, poor countries, we are suffering that we have lost the loved ones. And so a woman performing a role 4 times, try to take care of her family, the household, the responsibility, taking care of herself. So the state should respect our work, but the state is stigmatizing us as terrorists. So we cannot go to our embassies, Syrian embassies in other countries, because they consider us as terrorists. So thereupon, women, again, the activists or women activists in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, they're not really that much. Many Syrians living in Palestine because of the situation of Palestine, but women do not get financial support, they don't get cultural support, they don't get social support, even the children of those women. So the constitution, the Syrian constitution, the mother cannot be the guardian of the mother. The Syrian woman cannot be the guardian of her son or daughter. That's according to the Syrian constitution. So this is part of our suffering. So this is something that my mother suffered from, is that when I go to the HCR, we request any kind of right, any kind of support. They ask from us to bring the certificate, a certificate proving that I have a relative who died during the revolution by the regime. We cannot get these documents. It's difficult. The regime is trying to make our lives very difficult. So they ask us to get these documents in order to get the rights. So the approach, the defense approach that we are following, it is a right to have children being brought up at the labs of their mothers and fathers. So UNHCR are asking these documents, and unfortunately, we cannot get these documents by the regime. And women, how can women can help themselves? How can women continue their efforts? But there is hope. I am here. I am getting the hope from all women, my colleagues who are working with me, because we are working for our loved ones. We are working for those in detention. This circle of life that you have lived or you have seen, I'm sorry that I caused you pain, but this pain is going on for 11 years. We have prisoners of opinion, we have political prisoners. So I would like to say thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for everybody who are here, who are saying that we are defenders of human rights. Thank you that we are supporting each other. This is, for me, these sessions is truly psychological support for me. It's better than when I go to a psychiatric doctor. We are supporting each other here. But we have demands. And I know that we are here we hear to each other, from each other. As one of the colleagues said, he said, we need to hear from you. We need to hear what are your demands, requirements. It's very important for us that we think that Yasmin is here today, and she got this opportunity, but there are so many women who dream of such an opportunity to talk about their pain. And I am number one Syrian. I am number one in Syria, maybe, to talk about our pain, to talk about the marginalized people, that to give them the right to leave Syria, to talk about their agony, their suffering, and we have to say that one day we have talked, we have made our voices heard about our demands, about what is other people in Syria going through. It is very important that we think of assisting, supporting those women who are relatives are being exposed to torture. For me personally, the officer I have asked him about my father. He said to me, your father, forget your father. The officer told me, forget your father. So this is not only myself, this is all Syrian women who have detainees. We don't have the right to ask any question, to have any demands about the fate of those detainees or those are in prisons. Of course, all the international organizations, they don't have access to these prisons, to these detentions. So I demand the intervention of countries to put pressure on the regime to help women who lost their loved ones by supporting them financially, education, providing psychological support, to put pressure on the governments to at least give the visas to women who can come and talk about their suffering, and also to have access to most weak areas and vulnerable areas, and to help women who are, of course, there are women who are exposed to sexual exploitation and blackmail, and I have witnessed this. So I have seen cases that a woman would like to have food for her children, so she gives her body. So this is a kind of extortion. This is a kind of blackmailing, and the blackmailing that we are exposed to, where they tell us who is the name of the detainee of this, and give us money. We can help you. So the woman tries to do anything that she can in order to get the information about her husband, for example, but in the end, eventually, the information is false. This is an example. So I think in the Syrian context and all the countries that are demanding human rights, there should be a political support for our cause. There should be transnational support for our cause. We have a problem in our country. We have to be in solidarity with each other.
يصير في ايفنت مشترك.
Maybe a joint event, an action of solidarity, so that we don't feel that we are alone, because that causes pain to us. Therefore, when we have solidarity between each other, we are showing a great message to the oppressor, the regime. We hear from time to time, we heard it many times. They tell us, sorry, we cannot help you. Sorry, we don't have enough funding. So of course you can ask also the party that is not resolving our problems. Try to stop the bilateral relations with the Syrian regime. Stop supporting the Syrian regime, and this organizations that are trying to support women and men in Syria. Many of the Syrian men, they are either in prison or dead. So I am a survivor.
قطع التمويل.
So stopping the funding, this is, I'm sorry to say that, but I heard from parties saying that we are too busy with Ukraine. We know that the Ukrainian people are also suffering, but we are also suffering.
كتير, sorry, I will finish. No, thank you. والأهم من كل
It's most important what I have said is, or most beautiful thing is that deeds turn into, words turn into deeds. Do not stay on paper. It's very beautiful if we see words translated into deeds, but if it remains as ink on paper, it's useless. I have a dream that one day, when I saw the image, the photo, I imagined that one day, all of us, all human rights defenders, we will hold our hands, and by looking at this photo, that eventually we will get freedom, dignity, and respect, human dignity and human respect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I know we should follow the advice of our mothers, but I haven't met the devil, but if you're the lawyer of the devil, I love the devil. And thank you also for the voice you give to Syria, because I think it's important for your loved ones, for the country, but it's also important for us, because countries like Syria, they have been in the headlines, we looked at it, and after time there's a sort of, I don't know how to describe it, we get sort of completely complacent, it's sort of a new normal we accept, and I think you have an important voice to give for your loved ones as a human rights defender, but also to remind all of us that nothing has improved in Syria, and we still have to address this. And so really many thanks for these words and for your work, and I think it's also maybe for many of you who had to leave your country, I want to say, of course, we hope that you can continue working in your country, but if that is not possible, there's still an important role to play as a human rights defenders, giving a voice, and really thank you for this. A bit abruptly, I move now to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, and I'd like to give the floor to Oke Muratalevya from Kyrgyzstan, who is working in a disability rights organization, including on issues of sexual violence and other violations, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you.
Hello, dear colleagues. I'm very grateful for this platform. I'm very happy that I'm able to talk about the situation in Kyrgyzstan. My name is Oke Muratalevya, and I do have a disability. It's not like, hello, I'm an AA member. It's not like that at all. You know, when we ask what exactly we're doing, and actually I have that on my mind all the time, what are we doing? First of all, what I could say is that each human rights defender at some point in their life defines a value he or she would like to fight for. That's why we are defenders, human rights defenders, and not someone else. Sometimes they say in Kyrgyzstan, please share your success story. You know, the life of each and every woman with disability in Kyrgyzstan is not a success story. Of course, we have some successes. We were able to achieve something because we were able to defeat barriers in our way. Very often, during conferences, we say that each person has rights. Yes, that's true. But right now, I would like to say that we have rights, but we do not have possibilities to achieve those rights, to respect those rights. I do not have a success story. My story started with the fact that I was socially isolated. I could not go to kindergarten because no kindergarten wanted to have me, no school wanted to have me. And my mother, she had to write a document where she said that she does not mind if an accident happens with me, because it was expected of me to have an accident, a mortal accident. And out of the whole school, only one teacher said, please bring her, we will try to give her education. One teacher gave me this chance. Sometimes I think, what would have happened to me if this teacher didn't give me this chance? But in Kyrgyz culture, if you are an unmarried woman, in this case, you need to live with a male family member, father, brother, somebody, some male family member. And I think that if for not this one teacher, my life would have been completely different. And I'm really scared to think about that. Right now, we are helping women with disabilities that are not part of the statistics. We do not have a statistics of raped women with disability, a number of women that went to police. Such statistics doesn't exist. But those women do exist. And you know, we have so much work that until the end of our life, we will be able to work day and night on such cases. And sometimes those cases become more numerous. And I can never say no to a woman who needs support. And like my mentor said, she's also a woman. She said, only crazy people can work in our organization. Only crazy people can do our job. Because in our job, it's not possible just to go to the office. We need to have feelings when we do our job. And for me, the most important is to see a woman in every woman. One young girl that was decided by courts as being incapacitated. Everyone was saying about this girl that she imagined being raped. She was defamated. And when we brought her to our shelter and we started to educate her because she was illiterate, she could not write or read. But sometimes when we don't have opportunities, we don't get possibilities. But you know, disabilities, they are used for being manipulated. And this young girl, after some time, you know, when I visited the shelter, she said, hello. I said, hello. And she said, I will make some tea for you. But I didn't ask her to make some tea. I said, yes, let's have some tea. That's good. So she made tea. And she said, I would like to ask you a question. I said, yes, of course, go on. She said, what is the purpose of life? And while I was answering this question, it was like a different experience for me. I was completely amazed. I was shocked because all people thought that she was mentally disabled, but she happened to be much more profound than all the other people that stigmatized her. That's why it's so important to value in each person what he has already achieved, to value what everybody is. That's why we're trying to change the situation on a political level towards disabilities. Sometimes they ask me, why don't you deal with rights of men? Why are you dealing only with women and girls? Because I am a woman. Because I see those stereotypes, those prejudices against women. Sometimes I think that maybe I'm adjusted, but no, you can never be adjusted to this oppression. And today, my superior, I talked to her today, and like I said, I'm very worried about her health. her health has deteriorated recently. And unfortunately, in our country, we do not have a special medical care for such diseases. And she said that there was a law adopted recently that a government has access to bank accounts to each human rights defenders in a framework of anti-terrorism. Can you imagine that? It's really surprising. On one hand, government should create special opportunities for us, but in real, we have only limitations. And what you said about the vicious circle is completely correct. Sometimes I think, how can I interrupt this? How can I break this vicious circle? And I don't know how our life will be in the future, but each woman has a right to work, to have education, to have children, not to have children. Sometimes I'm laughing and I say to girls, you know, being an Asian woman, it means that nobody's expecting anything from us anymore. You can do whatever you want with your life. If you don't know how, we can show you how. Yes, it is difficult. And I go back now to the situation in my country. I don't know what awaits me. It's like being in a parallel universe, in a different reality. When girls go to universities, when they become independent, I'm very happy for them. I do not have parents. They died. It's just a reality. It's just my life. Nobody wants their parents dead. We always want our parents to live as long as they can. A very long time ago, it was only my mother who supported me. And then I asked her at that time, Mother, how did you make this decision? How did you decide to put me to school? And she said, I believed in you. That's why. And in the life of each person, we should be somebody who believed in her. Sometimes the whole world can be against us, but if there's just one person who believes in us, like a phoenix, we can move on. Thank you.
Spasiba. And I think we all believe in you, in your cause, and the way you've done this is really fascinating. Spasiba большое. We have two of our colleagues still to speak, and the topics fit a little bit in both of your cases, although your regions are very different. Indigenous rights, land rights, environmental rights, we've heard that this is the area where the highest rate of killings takes place, so certainly a high risk area. Maybe I start with you, Monica, from Indonesia, about your work and what gives you hope, and afterwards we go to Honduras, one of the countries with, I think, the highest killing rates that we have.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Again, let me introduce myself first. My full name is Monica Marici Kaili, and I'm from Aru Islands. It's a small island under Papua, and it's close to Australia. And it's located in Indonesia, especially. And when talking about the hopes, I know exactly that all of us, we have our own hopes that we really want it to be exist in our life. And I do have so many hopes that I have it for my people, and also what I fight for. And as a woman, I also want there are such things that happen to my life and also my people. And beside that, I am a teacher. So as a woman who stand up for the as a human rights defenders, and also as a woman who working as a teacher, it's a little bit crazy for me because I really want to be free, and I really want to be somebody else out there who can sitting and playing their phone and stuff like that. But no, I am here, I'm standing for my people, and also as a woman who is the first daughter and also who is the first grandchild of my family. I also have so many responsibilities for my family, and sometimes I can say that it's endangers me as a human rights defenders. And I also have a really big hopes that one day my people and I will live together without any problem, but it's impossible because we all are human beings, and we all have problems surrounding us. And I am here to telling you the story of my life and what I'm doing as a human rights defenders since 2013. But that was a really a year that I don't really understand my world as well as right now. But right now, since 2020, I am working as a teacher, and also beside that, I'm working as a human rights defenders, stand up for my people, especially for the indigenous people of Aru Islands. And we're fighting against the Navy of Indonesia. And a lot of my friends already mentioned their hopes, and I already mentioned that I have so many hopes that I really want to it happens in my life. But right now, as today, I have to, I should be with my family to celebrating my birthday today. But right now, I'm here. Yeah, I am here. I am here with all of you guys to build a better future for our life as a human rights defenders. And I hope that I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone. I'm here with you guys. And the things that I want to share with you guys here is, right now, not only me, but also my people, we are struggling. We face the cases that happens in our land, especially for the indigenous right. We're fighting against the Navy, and as I told some people, I mean some of my friends a couple days ago and yesterday, that we are fighting against the Navy, but not only the Navy, we're fighting against the country, especially, I mean, the country, the Indonesian itself, because our president, I have to mention that our president, he really doesn't care about our right as a human rights defenders and also as the indigenous people with their rights, but he just really care about what we have in our own homeland. And I also want to mention that there are some cases that happens when we fighting against the Navy. The first one were the Navy take our lands. It's about 689 hectares of our land. And they said that this land have no owner, but in fact, there is a village in that field, and it also, they also have, these people in this land also have, there are so many plants that they planting in this field, and the Navy, even when it comes to the process of judgments, the Navy also spreading the issue that this land has been sold since 1990, and they even attacked the psychology and physical under the pressure for human rights defenders, just like me and also the other young people in Aru Islands. I am talking based on my experience because I am the one and only girl who stand up for the indigenous land rights in my hometown. And I was create a community called Rumah Sastra Arafura. Maybe you can see in my t-shirt. I wear this t-shirt. And I create this community to build the awareness or raising the awareness among the young people to against what is the Navy doing and what is the country or Indonesia doing for us as the indigenous people in Aru Islands. And during that action that we took as the young people of Aru Islands, we were under the pressure of the Navy itself. They even built a cooperate with the police and the chief police in Aru Islands to press our activities in Aru Islands. When it was happening in 2021, Aru Islands was also faced the COVID-19, but we were lucky because we are on the green zone. But unfortunately, we have no good time, and sometimes they cut the activities that they want to do. And my community, we will work as the community who try to educate the young generation and the people in our islands through the arts, through the theater that we made, and through the poems that we wrote and we presented in front of the people every single week. But then they were stopping us. I mean, the Navy, and also they cooperate with the police. So then we cannot asking a permission to doing an event during the pandemic situations. And it was really crazy because we need, as a young people and as a human rights defenders, we want our people to understand our situation in Aru Islands. So not only me and also my fellows in Aru Islands, but also all the people and all the villages in Aru Islands, because we have 170 villages in Aru Islands who are exist, and when we come to the cooperate, we can also offer the things that the other villages can do to support the villages called Marvenven, who is the land who claimed by the Navy. But then we can't, because the Navy already spreading the bad issues about us as a human rights defenders, and also our activities. They even told some people that, oh, these young people, they don't even know what they're doing right now. They are endangering your life. And in fact, we didn't have so many people who interested in what we are doing. But we're trying so hard to do as much as we can do, and as we can do so many things that we can do through our works. And also, the other thing that happens to us as a human rights defender are some of our accounts in social media are also blocked. And I'm talking based on my experience also, because I have some accounts on social media that have been banned at that moment, and I cannot even get into my account, because I use my social media to campaign, to raise the awareness among my friends and also my followers on Instagram, on Facebook, and also TikTok. I'm sorry I have to say this, but this is the fact that I faced last year. So this is, I just share to you guys, so then you can know that as a human rights defenders, we are not only having a psychology or physical pressure, but we also can have so many problems and have so many things that we faced in our real life. And through that moment, I was a little bit stressful because of these things happened. But then here I am to stand up for my people, and also for me as a young generation of my land. If I'm not stand up for my people and also my family, and I will lose everything, not only the land itself, but also my people, my culture, my languages, and all the things that I own it. So another thing that happens, it was the Navy itself, they even escort the judgment when it comes to our land. And so then we will lose our land in the local and when it comes to the province level, we'll also lose. And now we're fighting in the national level, and I am here to build up, to raise the supporting, and also to raise the awareness of all of us here as a human rights defender. Because if I am not fighting today, if I'm just sitting in my house celebrating my birthday with my family, and then I will lose everything. I'm not gonna lose my family, I'm not gonna lose my land, but I will lose everything that I own. I might be one of the girl or the woman who can also go wherever I want. If I don't want to deal with this situation, and I don't want to facing this situation, But then I have to stand for my people and my land itself, and I have to deal with so many things that happen in my life. And I'm really thankful because even if I work as a teacher, but my students are really supporting me, and also my friends, my teacher friends are also supporting me with what I'm doing. Sometimes I was curious that maybe some of my students will see what I'm doing in a negative way. They might think that, oh, Miss Monique is a dangerous person. She always against the government. She always against the military and the country itself. But I'm really grateful that I have students. I have my students who are always supporting me, and they always said that, Miss Monique, we are so proud of you because you're the one and only woman who stand up for a lot of people in Aru Islands, and also you are the one and only teacher in our school who always stand up for our rights, and who always, sometimes we saw you with a truck and you hold the microphone, sometimes you hold the megaphone, and then you tell us so many things. And one of my students ever said, I might not understand what you're doing right now, but for me, you're the braver woman that I ever saw. You're even doing so many things that what my mom did. And I was like, well, thank you for that. I take it as a compliment. But then in the bottom of my heart, I'm really thankful because not all the people in my land see what I'm doing in a positive way. They don't even think that if I'm not fighting today, and I will lose everything that I owned, not only me, but also my people, all of the Arnes. And I know that I'm not alone again. I have to say that. But I also thank the headmaster of our school, because he also supporting me with what I'm doing, which is really good. And I also thankful the human rights defenders of all over the world who are supporting me with what I'm doing and hearing my stories, and also give me some advices. And I would like to thank everyone who supporting me, especially for Stella, who accompany me and always helping me with everything that I want. Thank you so much, and thank you very much.
Thank you, above all, thank you for what you do. And I think, I don't know how many we are, but I think you've gained ambassadors for your cause, for your land here in this room. I think we will not go home without thinking of Papua in a different way, thanks to your presence, your presentation, your words. And I don't know, we are not as good as the family probably in singing a little happy birthday, but maybe we can do in the room a quick happy birthday. I'm a terrible singer, but I count on you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Monica. Happy birthday to you. We still have one highlight to come. Okay. We still would like to hear from Rocia Santos Reis, if I pronounce it more or less okay. But she's from Honduras, and we're very, very eager to hear your work, and certainly in a country that is known for very, very serious threats to human rights defenders. And please.
Gracias. Hola, se pronuncia Rocío.
Thank you. Hello, it's Rocio. I'm from Honduras.
Nunca había escuchado de hablar de mi país.
And maybe you haven't heard of my country.
De que es un país con mucho.
And yes, you've heard that there is a high rate of crime and murder. And it's true that it's one of the most dangerous countries in the world. And it is one of the most vulnerable to climate change, and it's one of the most dangerous when it comes to defending the environment. And this is quite ironic. I'm here to talk to you about our reality, and I know that we don't have a lot of time, but it has been very fruitful. These days have been very enriching. We go back with plenty of insights from other countries and with information that maybe we didn't know of. And in the news, we see different things. We see it's not the same to hear firsthand from our defenders. I work for a human rights and environmental organization. It's CEPROYEC. And in CEPROYEC,
de mi país, también se escucha de que mi país tiene una historia de golpes de Estado.
Going back to what everyone knows about my country, that it has suffered a coup d'etat, that there's a lot of corruption and so on. Well, it's still the case. The last coup d'etat was 12 years ago. And after that, there was a de facto government that came to power. And it's been in power for 12 years. As a result of this government, there was more migration into the US, chasing the American dream. And there are thousands of Hondurans fleeing to the States. And although they know that the route is really dangerous, they prefer to take the chance. And many women, for instance, take contraceptive pills that are long-term because they know that they are vulnerable to sexual violations and to sexual assault. And so that they know that in the journey, they can be victims of rape. So this is the situation, but in terms of the economy and the environment, over the last years, we see that there has been an increase in extractivism. We know that we have lots of natural resources. We have timber, the mountains, water. So we've seen many foreign investors land in our country, and our government designed a legal framework that allowed for this extractivism to take place. This has impacted negatively on the indigenous communities, and the indigenous communities has been fighting for the protection of their environment, and this has to do with their ancestry and their defense for their land. So local rural communities find it really hard to grow their crops because they do not have access to water. And this is especially the case with mining and renewable energy projects. As you know, hydropower.
Que fue asesinada por la lucha.
This defender of human rights that was assassinated because she was an activist against a hydropower company. Now, during these 12 last years, we were able to go to run elections. We voted for a new government, and we were really hopeful. We thought that things were going to change, for the better, and that we were going to stop being an extractivist country overnight almost. And although we really hoped that murder, persecution of human rights defenders would go down, unfortunately, they were exacerbated with these government. I have followed closely very heartbreaking cases. Many of the victims were my colleagues. Augusto Benítez was killed, Adolfo Rosales, Roberta Diaz also was killed in August, and he had to flee the country because he had received a death threat. And I had to accompany one of the members of the families of these defenders. His dad was assassinated, and the police who found him said that he died because a horse had run over him. But instead, when we found the court, we found that it had bullet holes on it. So we decided to investigate the case. The family was really afraid because they were under threat. So we resettled and relocated them. On the following day, the family had been already localized because the police had denounced and had said where we had relocated the family. So we had to relocate the family again in a very safe way. And we did so overnight. And I was super afraid because I was afraid of stopping over to eat or to pee. I was afraid of us being shot because we were the target and we had been identified. But fortunately, the family is now safe and sound. But of course, they have lots of limitations because of this, for security reasons. And then Urupan is an ethnic group. They have their own language and their own land, and they were threatened by many companies. And I've been following closely this case. Eduardo has been threatened to death in May. And all these people, all these families, what we do with them is to resort to the protection mechanism from the national government. And this affords them a protective measures. For the most part, these protective measures are positive, but this national mechanism did not react when these defenders were assassinated. So I asked the mechanism to install surveillance cameras in the house of this target. And the mechanism said that they would not do that because it was not reasonable to do so. And the attempt of murder took place in the house of this defender. When this mechanism was created and installed in our country, we saw hope. But then we realized that there is lots of nepotism inside this mechanism. And we know that the Supreme Court, that the Public Prosecutor's Office, well, it's all stained. There is organized crime that has tarnished all these mechanisms. He has been extradited to the United States because of drug trafficking. And when he returned to the Supreme Court, well, the members started I mean, received him with open arms. So we have to say things as they are. There is a lot of corruption and collusion.
Porque todos aquellos quienes seguimos luchando contra los madereros, contra los mineros, contra todas
And all the colleagues and myself who are fighting against all these company owners that are part of the government and part of this legal framework are entering into a conflict of interest because it's a contradiction in itself. According to the UN, the 2020 in 2021, over 100 of defenders of environment were killed. So this is one of the most dangerous countries to be an environmentalist. So there are some people who give us some support, and without their help, we will have been jeopardized. We will have run a high level of risk. So we are very grateful for this.
el gobierno es de reciente integración.
We know that the government has recently been sworn in, and it's not going to be easy to change things after 12 years of the dictatorship. So the government has been in power for 8 months now. And there is always an alternative, which is to ask for help to the international organizations. And our proposal is to unlock some barriers. We want to find solutions to these problematics. And these barriers are limiting the tasks of human rights defenders. One of these alternatives that was presented during the previous mandate was to be considered as people who are politically exposed. So we can't be curtailed our rights. The bank can cancel our accounts. And this year, 5 international organizations approved our projects, but we cannot work and keep on working because we cannot gain any access to our accounts because we have been categorized as politically exposed people. And we have another case, the case of Victor Vázquez. And Victor
no está muerto.
Is, well, has been investigated. And the policeman who was accompanying him accused him of being a terrorist. The policeman imprisoned him. And so Victor is still being arrested. He was accused of being displaced. So in our country, there are some bans.
Es tan absurdo que hasta decirlo me da como rabia.
And so I'm sorry because this is very ridiculous.
Sí, es insólito. Y eso está en el Código Penal, o sea.
And this is stated in the criminal code. Defending the environment means being a gang member, a terrorist, or a person who is politically exposed. There are lots of restrictions. So
la propuesta, ¿no? Ir quitando esos candados.
But this is our proposal. We want to send petitions to international organizations. We know that the EU is doing a huge work, and we are super grateful because the guiding principles have been very useful to us because we've resorted to them.
continúa, ¿verdad?
But this fight is still ongoing. And of course, I would also like to tell good stories about my country. We are a very noble people. We are full of dignity, and we keep resisting. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
But it's difficult after these four testimonies to continue. I mean, and those are only 4 testimonies. I mean, I'm sure any of you on stage here would have been just incredible. I want to quickly come back to you. Does any of you want to give a quick response or comment, or Mary?
First of all, may I say how moving all your testimonies are. And it is extraordinary to see how you work under such difficult circumstances and in terrible situations where you often are unsupported. So I think what it says to the EU is that the support for human rights defenders is really, really great. The support by the diplomatic missions is good in some parts, patchy in other parts, and indeed the support by individual states too can be good or can be less good. So I think what is needed is a very consistent support, both political and financial, to human rights defenders all around the world. Because we all know that states are driven by their political and strategic interests. They don't always apply the same standards to one country as another. And for all the defenders here and in the room, it's important that states understand that human rights defenders must be supported wherever they are. And in countries where there is conflict, there must be the additional support of putting real pressure on the de facto authorities, for example, Myanmar or Syria, or and in other countries like Ethiopia and conflict countries, but also governments that are guilty of atrocities in some of these conflict countries as well. So it is extremely, and you know, at the end of the day, it's not defenders who should be defending themselves, though they end up having to, because they create networks to help support each other and defend each other. But it is the responsibility of states to protect human rights defenders. And sometimes that gets lost because, for example, in the EU, member states hide behind the EU delegations, and EU delegations say, oh, we need all the member states. There is nothing to prevent an individual member state acting, and there is nothing to prevent the EU delegation to act at local level. And it is important that this message gets through in order to support human rights defenders consistently wherever they are. Thank you.
Thank you. No, just one word from me. First, to thank all of you for sharing your experience and for your testimony. I couldn't help, but while I was listening to you, I thought, okay, it's 5 human rights defenders. What do they have in common? They have a lot in common, but one thing stands out. You are all brave young women. Strong young women, and it's strong young women right now in the streets of Iran fighting for human rights and human dignity. and it's young women in Afghanistan fighting for the right to an education, to an employment. It's young women in Africa, very successful youth movements in so many places, leading to the ban of FGM and other harmful practice because of their determination, their pressure on the governments. It's a young adolescent to start a global movement all around the world to really address climate change. And indeed, it is the responsibility of states, of duty bearers to make reforms, to make legislative change, to protect human rights, but the change really comes from within, comes from the community, and I'm so convinced it will come from young women and young people more generally. And I was last week in New York at this summit on education, and it was closed by Amina Mohamed, who is the Deputy Secretary of the UN, a great person, and her last word was, girls will change the world. And I think she was wrong, because girls are changing the world already as we speak. Thanks.
Un mot aussi, vraiment pour vous remercier du fond du cœur.
I wanted to thank you as well from the bottom of my heart, because it is also your testimonies that give us even more willpower to be beside you, to stand beside you and help you. And, you know, you asked us to talk about hope. That's good. But we also know everything that's going on in the world, in all the countries. There's no perfect country. We're very well aware of that. There's a lot to improve. There's a lot to do. Our special rapporteur spoke of the responsibility of the states. It's true that it's, first of all, the responsibility of the state where all the violations are happening, but it's also the responsibility of the other states to bring them to stop these violations. And the fight against impunity is absolutely fundamental. It is key. When I heard your testimony on Syria, obviously, we mustn't forget about all these conflicts around the world. It's true, now we're speaking a lot about Ukraine, but we mustn't forget all the others that are ongoing. And one more thing I wanted to say to conclude on a hopeful note. I strongly believe in the role of women, of girls, because, and I apologize to the men in here, but we have had a world that has been mainly governed by men, and it is quite recent to see women take charge of their lives and of other people's lives, to take charge politically, socially. And obviously there are wonderful men in charge as well. I don't mean the opposite, but we must invest in the education of girls, of women, and we may hope that this will improve the world we live in that isn't as pink as we wish.
Hombres que también defienden los derechos humanos de las mujeres. Y muy impresionado por este panel de valientes defensoras de derechos humanos.
Well, there are men who defend the human rights of women, and there are women who speak all official languages of the United Nations and who show all this cross-sectorality as women, and also in the role they have to carry out. And I think that I only have some minutes left, and I would like to congratulate Rocío for her fight, because very shortly she has described her country, her beautiful country, as well as the situation Latin America is facing to us. You were describing the situation, and I was thinking of Honduras, which is a country I know very well, but at the same time, I was thinking of all the challenges Latin America is facing, and their very difficult circumstances like a coup d'etat, very hard legacy after many electoral violence, after many elections, we are weak. Institutions are weak, and the country has to work every single day to build up on the rule of law. But there is will. And I have observed that it's possible to dialogue with the state authorities. I was a rapporteur of Honduras, and I always listened something very important, which is the commitment states have to respect their obligations in the field of human rights. And according to this official narrative, we have to urge these states to respect human rights. Thank you very much, Rocío. Thank you.
We had a very intensive time. There's still food and celebration waiting, but we can maybe, if we have a few minutes, if there are 2 or 3 very quick questions from the floor, but very, very, very short, because we should celebrate still. 1, 2, 3. And quick, please. Up.
Hi, and thank you. My name is Leo Javier, and I come from Cuba. And my question is for Ms. Mary Lawlor. So we see that Cuba is one of the countries with the worst human rights records in the world right now. And ironically, it holds a place in the Human Rights Council. We also see since 2017 that the European Union has engaged Cuba through the PDCA agreement, and it has had 4 human rights dialogue, which has excluded Cuban civil society. Since ever, Cuba has never allowed a special rapporteur to go and visit Cuban jails. Today we have over 1,200 prisoners, political prisoners. So my question is, will we ever see a special rapporteur in Cuba?
Merci. C'est pas une question. Je m'appelle Aïcha Membelassen. Je suis juge.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I'm a judge, Tunisian judge, vice president of the Tunisian magistrates. At the end of this conference, after 3 days with such important discussions, useful networking with so many emotions and experience shared, I would like to congratulate the team that worked on the organization for months. I congratulate ProtectDefenders.eu for the work that they're carrying out, all the people who have ensured the logistic, material, and technical equipment. And I also congratulate the 2 organizations that work within the program who ensure that we are all here to discuss the defense of our human rights and our fight for human rights. Thank you all.
تشکر از اینکه به من وقت دادین.
Thank you so much for providing this chance to talk.
My name is Tariq Saidi. I'm from Afghanistan. Oh, thank you. اوکی. در آغاز میخواستم من هم از تمام از پروتکت دیفندر و همکارانشان بسیار تشکری بکنم که در این 3-4 روز فقط میدویدن تا برنامه خوب و مفیدی برای ما باشه.
Yeah, first of all, let me thank you for all people who are come together and as a human rights defenders and also product defenders for providing this chance and as my colleague said for giving chance technically and also providing logistic support.
Thank you so much. من سوال ندارم، فقط میخواستم یک مسئله مطرح بسازم.
I don't have any specific question, just I want to mention one statement.
حداقل حدود 15 یا 16 سال است که من به عنوان مدافع حقوق زنان و حقوق بشر در افغانستان فعالیت دارم.
It is almost 15 years that I'm doing as my activities as a human rights defenders.
در جهان امروز متوجه این مسئله ما هستیم که پرچم مبارزه با ناعدالتی، با دیکتاتوری به دست زنان هست.
Right the moment we all know that according to my experience, we all know that during these years and the current time, we know the future belongs to women.
Justice and
and also women can provide justice and equality.
و من افتخار میکنم که امروز در جمع و در حضور این زنان قهرمان قرار دارم.
It's my pleasure and it's a big proud that I'm among of these active women.
و تشکر میکنم از ایشان که یادی از زنان ایران و افغانستان و کشورهای دیگری کردند که در حال حاضر خیابانها با خون خودشان رنگین میکنند و از عدالت و حقوق بشر دفاع میکنند.
And thank you so much for lady that mentioned about the situation in Afghanistan and Iran, especially for women that they are facing with difficulties and problems, especially that they are doing and fighting for freedoms and also for justice in Iran and Afghanistan right the moment.
تشکر از اینکه به من وقت دادید.
And thank you so much for providing this chance to talk.
Thank you very much. I know there are many more who want to speak, but I think we have to come to a closure. But I want to hear, when are we going to Cuba?
Well, I have requested, and I requested an official visit to Cuba, which got I don't know how to describe it, but wasn't taken seriously. But I'll keep requesting, and they know I've already been to Cuba, on holiday it was actually at one point. But
I'm sure you visited in your holidays Human Rights Defenders.
But what I'm saying is that I am in dialogue with the Cubans. I am trying to persuade them to help protect human rights defenders. I have disagreements with them over, as I do with some civil society, as to who is a human rights defender. As far as I can see, some of the cultural defenders, cultural people can also be political activists. So if I find somebody like that, I refer them to the Special Rapporteur on Culture. So all I can tell you is I'm going to continue trying to go to Cuba, and I'm going to continue trying to persuade them to protect human rights defenders. But we know it's a difficult task.
Thank you, Mary. I think we've come to, there's no other, I think we've come to an end, but it's 4 days that were very intensive, and we should give a final fanfare to this. And I would ask Patricia, our co-chair from FEDH, to come to stage. One of the women that is already the future and the present, to say a few final words.
Merci, Gerald. Where am I going to be? This is the question. I'm going to turn my back here. Sorry. Je vais parler en français. Donc, mon nom est Patricia.
I will speak English. My name is Patricia. I work at the International Federation for Human Rights. And I have the difficult task to give you an overview in 5 minutes of what has been said over 2 hours. So I will try to do that exercise. Obviously, I will not be able to be faithful, first of all, to the quality of your interventions, for which I thank you so much. And also for your 5 interventions and your testimonies that were so sincere and so emotional. It really gives so much heart and experience when we work on issues linked to human rights. It was very moving and necessary to hear you. We really listened to you, And I wanted to underline 4 main messages that I remember, that I take home from this debate. The first, I think we must acknowledge publicly, unambiguously, the necessity, the positive role, and the essential role that is played by defenders, men and women, defenders, of human rights in society, to defend values of equality, of liberty, of democracy, and of human dignity. They are not terrorists. Human rights defenders play an essential role in society, especially today, I would say, given the rise of far-right parties, of autocratic regimes, and the repression of the civil society space. Now, even though we haven't spoken of that point, we should underline the shared preoccupation given the precariousness, which is increasing, of human rights defenders, which are more and more exposed to violence, to intimidations, to arbitrary arrests, to disappearings, and sometimes murder, targeted murders. Thirdly, we have spoken a lot about the state's responsibility, and we must underline the state's responsibility to protect the right to defend human rights. Defending human rights is not a crime, it is a right. And the protection of such right isn't just words. You said we need to translate words into actions. They are also actions that we need to take at all levels, local, national, regional, international levels. The articulation of these actions can impact in the fight that we are fighting all together. The fourth point that I wanted to underline, and it's maybe the most important, the words that I heard with all the testimonies make that this fight led by human rights defenders is a fight that constitutes a human rights movement, that is a live movement. And what bears this live movement is commitment, determination, from what I heard, tenacity, perseverance, trust. What else have I heard? Passion, hope, solidarity, resilience in face of suffering, ingenuity to lead forward with these fights. I wanted to underline these words because beyond the programs and the support, for which I thank very strongly the European Union that supports us politically and financially, all these values that are invisible drive us and will make us go on no matter what happens. So I thank you for all these exchanges and debates in all the fights that all defenders are leading. And I wanted to underline and thank for the support for all institutions and organizations from the civil society, regional, national, international. Obviously, the organizations working here at Protect Defenders. And I would like to thank the whole team of the Secretariat of Protect Defenders. Wait.
En particulier,
in particular, I wanted to thank
Javier
and Marie, who are invisible, but they have done a huge amount of work.
Je voulais également remercier l'interprétation qui nous permet effectivement d'échanger dans toutes les langues et c'est vraiment génial. Merci beaucoup.
I also wanted to thank the interpreters who allowed us to exchange in different languages. And I would, of course, like to thank all the panelists and the European Union, without which Protect Defenders could not exist. Thank you so much.
Voilà. Et donc, je vous invite à continuer.
So I'd like to invite you to continue our discussions face-to-face, one-to-one. So we have a cocktail and dinner that's waiting for us. Thank you, and have a good evening.